I used to think life had a rhythm, a kind of order you could depend on if you played your cards right. That's what I believed before everything unraveled. I was 33, living in a clean one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, Seattle, with a view that always made my mornings feel a bit brighter. I worked as a software developer for a mid-sized firm downtown, nothing flashy, but steady, predictable, secure. I liked that. I liked the sense of control. And then came Amanda. We met the way people in their late 20s often do, half by accident, half through friends trying to force fate. It was a bonfire party just outside the city. I didn't want to go. I remember standing awkwardly near the edge of the group, holding a lukewarm beer, debating how long I needed to stay before I could head home without seeming rude. And then Amanda walked over with that easy smile that made everyone feel like they already knew her. She asked if I was Tyler, which surprised me, and then laughed and said she'd been trying to find someone who looked as uncomfortable as she felt. From that night, it was like something shifted. We started texting the next day. First light banter, memes, jokes about people at the party, then deeper talks, about childhood, music, old heartbreaks, the pressure to always seem like you have your life together. There was something grounding about her, something wild but also warm. I found myself craving her presence. She made everything feel easier. Over the next 2 years, she became my anchor. Late-night coffees at our favorite spot down on Pike Street, where we'd sit by the window and talk about how we wanted to escape the city someday. Weekend hikes, even though I hated them, because she loved the way the trees made her feel small. I started noticing little things, like how she always hummed when chopping vegetables or how she got quiet when reading something that moved her. She filled my apartment with color, actual plants, hand-drawn calendars, pictures on the fridge. She made my routines feel less like repetition and more like comfort. When I proposed to her, it felt like the only possible ending to our story, or maybe the beginning. It was Christmas Eve, snow falling like a cliché, but I didn't care. We were walking through Volunteer Park, everything around us soft and white. I could barely feel my fingers when I pulled the ring out of my coat pocket, but her eyes, the way they went wide, then welled up, I'll never forget it. She didn't even say yes at first, just nodded while covering her mouth with her gloves, laughing and crying at the same time. After that, everything moved quickly. Amanda dove into wedding planning with a kind of energy I hadn't seen before. Her Pinterest board grew faster than I could keep up with. She'd spend nights scrolling through floral arrangements and lace patterns, talking out loud to herself as I worked beside her. We booked Willow Creek Estate in Oregon after one virtual tour. She said it looked like something out of a Jane Austen novel. I agreed, though I had no real frame of reference. My parents were thrilled. Hers were already making hotel plans. It all felt like momentum, like something that had been set in motion long before I'd even proposed. We had a date, late July, and Amanda already had her dress picked out by February. I remember watching her dance around our living room in sweatpants, phone in hand, announcing she'd finally chosen the right one. She wouldn't show it to me, of course, just smiled and said, "You'll cry. I promise." I believed her. We made guest lists, argued over the DJ versus live band debate, tasted cakes at overpriced bakeries. I'd be lying if I said I cared about the details, but seeing her light up made it all worth it. She made the whole thing feel magical, like we were building something that would last. My friends called me lucky. Her friends told me she never smiled like that before me. I started to think maybe I was actually doing this right, that maybe, finally, I'd figured out what it meant to build a life with someone. Then came the Vegas trip. It was supposed to be simple. A long weekend. Just the guys. My brother Josh, my college roommate Matt, and a couple of work buddies who swore they knew the best spots off the strip. Amanda had her own bachelorette plans, some wine country thing in California with her bridesmaids. We joked about who'd come back more hungover. She kissed me goodbye at the airport and said, "Don't come back married," laughing as she turned to leave. I laughed too. I had no idea how that trip would burn everything to the ground. That Thursday morning, Amanda stood at our front door in her oversized hoodie, holding a pink carry-on with a heart-shaped tag she'd bought just for the trip. Her hair was tied up in that messy bun she wore when she didn't want to try but still looked perfect. She leaned in, kissed me softly, and said, "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." I smiled, said something like, "Be safe," and watched her disappear down the hallway toward the elevator. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I saw her the way I always had, the last moment before the split in the story. We had planned it weeks ago. Same weekend, different vibes. While Amanda and her 6 bridesmaids, all college friends, work friends, and one cousin, headed to Las Vegas, I'd be with my guys in a quiet lakeside cabin in Idaho. That was my kind of celebration. No chaos, no hangovers, no neon signs buzzing through the night. Just nature, firewood, and a cooler full of beer. My brother Josh had found the cabin online. It had a long wooden dock stretching over still water, a fire pit, and enough space for all 5 of us to relax, grill, and unplug. Amanda's trip was the opposite. High heels, sequins, clubs with velvet ropes, bottle service. She wanted to dance. She said this would be her last wild weekend before marriage, and I didn't question it. I trusted her. I'd always trusted her. She was the kind of person who laughed at flirty bartenders but never crossed lines. We had no history of jealousy, no fights about boundaries. When she told me about the VIP package her maid of honor Courtney booked at some rooftop club, I just nodded and told her to have fun. Courtney. I never liked her much. She always seemed like she was holding back something when she spoke to me, polite, sure, but in a tight-lipped way. She'd ask me questions that felt more like tests. Are you sure you're ready for this? You know how much Amanda's been through, right? I'd smile, nod, say the right things. But even when I gave the right answers, she'd look at me like she didn't believe me. Like she was waiting for me to mess up. Amanda insisted Courtney was just protective, said they'd been through hell together in college. I never pressed. Every bride gets one friend who watches the groom like a hawk, I told myself. Thursday afternoon, we hit the road in my SUV. Matt brought poker chips, a Bluetooth speaker, and enough snacks to feed a small army. Josh drove his own truck with fishing gear and a couple cases of beer. The drive was long but peaceful, winding through forest roads as the sky shifted from blue to gray. I remember thinking how good it felt to leave the city, to step away from planning and expectations. The cabin was everything we hoped for, quiet, remote, surrounded by tall trees and the kind of silence you forget exists when you live in Seattle. We unpacked, cracked open beers, and started a fire as the sun dipped low. We weren't 21 anymore. No one was trying to black out or chase anything wild. We played poker on the porch, told stories from college, laughed harder than I had in months. That first night, I texted Amanda before going to bed. Just a simple, made it safe. Love you. She replied a few minutes later, same here. Love you too, babe. Be good. There was a photo attached, her and the girls in matching sashes, standing in front of a massive fountain, all of them glowing with energy. She looked happy. Drunk, maybe. But happy. The next day, we fished. We grilled steaks. We played cards again. There was no cell service near the lake, so I only checked my phone when I walked up the trail behind the cabin, where I could catch a few bars. I saw a couple of updates from Amanda, mostly selfies, group shots, boomerangs of cocktails clinking together. It looked like the party was in full swing. At one point I paused, staring at a video of her dancing in a club, lights flashing around her. She was laughing, wild and free in a way I rarely saw. I told myself that was good, that she deserved a weekend like that. She'd worked so hard. She'd planned so much. I went back down to the cabin and didn't think more of it. That night, as we sat around the fire pit, Josh made a toast. He said, to Tyler, the most boring bachelor in America. Everyone laughed. I raised my bottle, pretending to be offended. But I liked it that way. I didn't want wild stories. I just wanted Amanda. I thought we were both on the same page. But somewhere out there, under the neon sky of Las Vegas, something was shifting. Something had already happened, or was about to, that would tear straight through everything we'd built. And I had no idea. I sat there on a wooden bench, smoke in my hoodie, stars above, thinking about how lucky I was. Meanwhile, in another state, the story was already changing. The light coming through the window of the cabin was soft and gray, the kind of morning haze that usually made me want to pull the blanket back over my head and sleep another hour. But something felt wrong. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, blinking against the brightness of the screen, and there they were, 19 missed calls. All from a Las Vegas area code. My stomach dropped before I even opened the call log. I sat up too fast, heart racing, fingers fumbling as I hit redial. The others were still asleep in the bunks around me, the room quiet except for the occasional snore or shift of a blanket. The call connected after the second ring, and a calm, practiced voice answered. Desert Mercy Hospital. This is Nurse Castillo speaking. I couldn't find my voice right away. I asked if someone had called me from that number. She paused and then asked, "Are you Tyler Granger?" The tone in her voice shifted slightly when I said yes, and that was when I felt my throat tighten. She said Amanda had been brought in during the night, unresponsive, unconscious, and diagnosed with acute alcohol poisoning. Her blood alcohol level had been dangerously high. They'd stabilized her, but she wasn't out of the woods yet. They were keeping her for observation, at least overnight. I didn't speak for a few seconds. The room around me blurred. I asked if she was awake now, and the nurse said yes, but groggy and disoriented. "She's been asking for you," she added. That sentence hit me in the chest. I thanked her and hung up. I was already pulling on jeans and grabbing my bag when the guys started to wake up, confused, asking what was going on. I didn't explain much. Just said Amanda was in the hospital and I had to go. No one argued. I didn't fly. I couldn't. I told myself it was about the logistics, the airport being too far, the drive only being 12 hours, but that wasn't the truth. I needed the drive. I needed the time. I needed the miles of highway and the hum of the engine to make sense of the sudden, sick feeling sitting just behind my ribs. I filled up the tank, grabbed a gas station coffee I didn't drink, and started the long stretch south. The further I drove, the more confused I became. Amanda drank, sure, but never like that. She wasn't the type to lose control. In 2 years together, I'd seen her drunk maybe 3 times, and even then, she was the kind of person who kept checking her water intake between glasses of wine. She didn't take shots. She didn't get sloppy. She was always the one making sure her friends got home safe, always the one holding someone's hair back at the end of the night. The idea of her in a hospital bed with alcohol poisoning didn't make sense. It didn't add up. Somewhere outside of Salt Lake, my phone rang. It was Amanda. Her voice was soft, thin, like she'd been crying for hours. She said my name like it was a question. I told her I was on my way. She said, "You didn't have to," and I almost laughed at how absurd that sounded. I asked her what happened, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. She said she didn't remember much, just drinking too fast, too hard. She mentioned someone ordering shots, and then her voice trailed off. Everything went black, she said. I tried to ask if anyone hurt her, if anything else happened, but she just said, "I don't know," and her voice cracked. The call ended with her whispering, "I'm sorry," like she'd broken something she couldn't fix. I kept driving, gripping the steering wheel harder than I needed to, my mind cycling through images I didn't want to see. Her in that club, dancing under those flashing lights. Courtney with her arm around Amanda's shoulders. The video I'd watched the night before, where Amanda looked drunk but not poisoned. Not dying. I thought about the way she had said goodbye that morning, carefree, joking. I thought about how she'd planned every detail of this wedding down to the scent of the centerpieces, how careful she always was, how in control. So why now? The silence in the car was deafening. Every question echoed louder than the last. Something didn't fit. Something about this wasn't just about drinking too much. Amanda didn't drink like that. Amanda didn't lose nights. And the way she sounded on the phone, ashamed, scared, it didn't feel like someone recovering from a party that went a little too far. It felt like someone who had stepped off a cliff and didn't know how she got there. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, not to panic until I had answers. But the longer I drove, the harder it became to believe this was just a mistake. Something had happened in Vegas that night, something Amanda couldn't say, or didn't want to. And with every mile that passed, the version of the woman I thought I was marrying started to blur at the edges. The hospital room had smelled like disinfectant and dry air, and Amanda looked impossibly small in that narrow bed, curled on her side with the blankets pulled up to her chin. Her skin was pale, lips dry, and her eyes, when she finally opened them, held something I couldn't name. I flew us home the next morning, holding her hand through the airport like she might float away if I let go. She barely said a word on the plane. Just leaned against the window and stared out, the cloud reflections shifting across her face. When we got back to the apartment, she kicked off her shoes, walked to the bedroom, and collapsed into sleep. She didn't stir for 14 hours. While she slept, I sat on the couch with my laptop open, phone in hand, trying to make sense of a night no one seemed to remember. I started scrolling through Instagram, looking through every tagged photo, every post from the bridesmaids. It wasn't hard to find them, they'd all been posting nonstop since the trip started. Thursday night was lit up with selfies from the casino floor, group shots with matching bride tribe shirts, champagne glasses raised in manicured hands. There was one of Amanda with a plastic tiara crooked on her head, eyes shining under the neon light of a rooftop bar, cheeks flushed. The last post was time-stamped 11:07 p.m., Courtney grinning beside Amanda, holding a massive cocktail with a sparkler sticking out of it. Then, nothing. Friday, the day Amanda was admitted to the ER, was a void. No posts. No stories. No likes. It was like someone had turned off the lights and no one noticed. The timeline picked up again Saturday around noon with brunch photos, blurry smiles, bottomless mimosas, captioned with jokes about hangovers and what even happened last night lol. But there was no mention of the hospital, no word about Amanda being sick, and definitely no photos of her. In fact, it was like she didn't exist on Friday at all. I kept refreshing the pages, hoping I'd missed something. A tagged story, a comment, anything. But the silence was clean, deliberate. A blackout. When I brought it up to Amanda later, her face tightened almost immediately. She was lying on the couch, wrapped in one of the throw blankets her mother had given us, flipping through some lifestyle magazine she wasn't reading. I told her I'd looked at the photos, and there was a weird gap, nothing from Friday. She didn't even look up. Just said she'd been overwhelmed and that maybe everyone just took a break from their phones. Her voice was clipped, controlled. I asked her again, gently, if she remembered anything new. She shook her head, said she didn't want to talk about it, said it was over. Her words were too fast. Too clean. Like she'd rehearsed them. I didn't push that night, but something in me shifted. She was never vague with me before. Amanda was sharp, direct, confident in conversation. This wasn't her. It was like watching someone wear her skin but speak through a different mouth. Over the next few days, she grew more distant. She kept saying she was tired, that she needed rest, but she didn't seem to want to talk to anyone, especially not the bridesmaids. I caught her ignoring calls from Courtney twice. The screen lit up with her name, and Amanda just watched it ring without moving. When I asked if everything was okay with them, she said she didn't want drama right now, that she just needed space. It wasn't like her. She and Courtney talked every day before the trip. Now it was like she was afraid of her. One night, about a week after we got home, I found Amanda in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like she didn't know what she was looking for. I leaned against the doorway and asked her, as plainly as I could, "Did something happen that night? Something you're not telling me?" She froze for just a second. Not long enough for someone else to notice, but I knew her well. I saw it. A hitch in her breath, a tension in her shoulders. She turned and said no, but there was a strange edge to her voice. It was too flat. Like the word came from muscle memory, not truth. That was the first real crack. Not the hospital, not the silence. It was that no. The second came 3 days later, in the form of a small brown envelope shoved through our mail slot with no return address, no stamp. I almost missed it. It had been mixed in with a stack of credit card offers and appointment reminders. I picked it up and felt the weight of something inside, paper, maybe a photo. My name wasn't on it. Neither was Amanda's. Just a plain envelope, sealed with a single piece of clear tape, as if someone had taken great care to make it seem unremarkable. I held it in my hand for a long time before opening it. Something in my chest was already bracing. The envelope felt heavier than it should have for its size, like the weight of it wasn't in the object but in whatever was waiting for me inside. I peeled the tape slowly, hands suddenly unsure, my stomach twisting with that instinct you get when something is about to shift permanently and there's no way to stop it. Inside was a USB drive and a small, square piece of paper folded once, thick with black ink in all caps handwriting. "You deserve to know the truth before you marry her." My hands went cold. I didn't open it right away. I stared at that note for what felt like hours, turning the words over in my head like a code I didn't want to crack. The USB sat in my palm like a loaded gun. I thought about waking Amanda, asking if she knew anything about it, but I didn't. Something in me already understood, whatever was on it, she wouldn't want me to see. And that's why I had to. I plugged it into my laptop with a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching myself from a distance, like this was happening to someone else. There was only one file on the drive. No name, no folder, just a single video labeled 927 footage.mov. I opened it. The footage was from a hallway security camera, the angle grainy, the kind of slightly distorted image that makes everyone look a bit taller, a bit off. A time stamp sat in the corner, 2:47 a.m., Friday. My mouth went dry. Amanda stepped out of the hotel elevator wearing the silver dress I'd seen in earlier photos, the one with the low back she'd picked out weeks before the trip. She was not alone. 4 men exited with her, none of them familiar, older than her, maybe late 30s or early 40s. One had a shaved head and a shirt half unbuttoned, another wore a sports jersey, laughing too loudly even in silence. Amanda wobbled slightly in her heels, smiling, clutching the arm of the man closest to her. They all moved together toward the end of the hall. One of the men pulled a keycard from his back pocket and opened the door to room 927. They all went inside. I paused the video there, stared at the frozen frame. Amanda, halfway into the room, head turned slightly, mouth open mid-laugh. The man behind her holding the door. I hit play again. At 4:19 a.m., the door opened. The same 4 men walked out one by one, high-fiving, joking, 2 of them looking back into the room like they were proud of something. I felt a numb pressure building behind my eyes, my throat tightening. Then Amanda appeared. She stepped out slowly, like her body wasn't fully connected to her legs. Her hair was a mess, the curls flattened and frizzy. Her dress was twisted at the waist, straps hanging awkwardly over her shoulders. She looked disoriented, out of place, lost. She staggered a few steps down the hall, then leaned against the wall with both hands and slid to the floor. That's when she started crying. Not screaming, not sobbing, just this silent, shaking cry, the kind you feel even without sound. She folded in on herself like her own body had betrayed her. I watched her press her forehead to her knees, rocking slightly, fists clenched in her lap. It went on like that for minutes. Then another figure appeared on screen, Courtney. She walked fast, like she knew exactly where Amanda would be. She knelt down, whispered something, pulled Amanda to her feet, and led her away. Neither of them looked at the camera. I watched the video 3 more times. Then again. I stopped breathing somewhere around the second playback. Each frame hit harder than the last. I knew that hallway now, its dim lights, the peeling gold numbers on the doors, the exact way Amanda stumbled in her heels. It etched itself into my brain like a scar. There was no sound, but I could hear everything in my head, the laughter, the silence after the door closed, the soft thud of Amanda sliding to the floor. When the screen went black, I just sat there. The cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to react. I didn't move. 1,000 thoughts collided at once. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, something I hadn't seen, context that changed the meaning of what I just watched. But I couldn't escape the image of her walking out of that room. Not the way she looked. Not the way those men celebrated. Not the way she cried alone in a hallway at 4 in the morning. Amanda had said she didn't remember anything from that night. But that didn't look like forgetfulness. That looked like trauma. I didn't confront her. Not that night. Not the next morning. I carried the weight of that video in silence, a private grief, a poison that spread slowly with every glance, every moment she spoke to me like nothing had changed. She made coffee the next morning, humming quietly, like she always did. She asked what I wanted for dinner. She kissed my cheek. And all I could see was the hallway. Room 927. The look on her face. And I stayed quiet. Because I didn't know who she was anymore. Or maybe I did. Maybe, for the first time, I was finally seeing her. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway again. Amanda stepping out of the room, stumbling, crying, her body slouched in a way I'd never seen before. It didn't feel like a memory anymore, it felt like a live feed, stuck on repeat in my head. I started pacing at night, walking from the kitchen to the living room in the dark, trying to figure out if I'd missed something, if there was a part of the story I wasn't seeing. But the silence around it all, the empty Friday in the photos, Amanda's vague answers, the way Courtney had dragged her away from the camera like it was routine, kept pressing harder against my ribs. The video was just the beginning. I needed to know everything. Amanda and I had shared passwords years ago, Netflix, Spotify, email, even iCloud. It wasn't about trust then, it was just convenience. But now it gave me access. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat down at my computer and opened her cloud account. I told myself it wasn't snooping. I told myself I had the right. What I found pulled the floor out from under me. Her text messages were backed up. I searched for Courtney's name and opened the thread. My chest went tight as the messages loaded, blue and gray bubbles stacking up like receipts. Amanda had messaged her the morning after the hospital, shaking, unsure. She wrote, "Court. I really don't remember what happened. What did I do?" The typing bubble from Courtney appeared seconds later. Her reply was fast, clipped, "You drank too much, mans. That's it. You were fine. Nothing happened." Amanda pressed again. "Are you sure? I feel like something's wrong." "The guys," Courtney replied, "don't spiral. You're getting married. Don't self-sabotage." Then another, "It's over. Don't talk about this again." It didn't read like comfort. It read like control. I kept digging, my heart pounding. In the group chat labeled, "Bride Ride or Dies," the tone was colder. There were 6 of them, all the bridesmaids. Rachel, the quieter one Amanda worked with at her old job, had written, "Guys, this feels wrong. Amanda was unconscious. We need to tell her the truth." There was a pause in the thread. Then another bridesmaid, Lexi, replied, "It's handled. We're not turning this into a scandal. It was just a wild night." Courtney jumped in soon after, "Don't be dramatic, Ratch. She's fine now. She doesn't need to relive that night." And then, we all agreed. Silence. "Don't make this messier." Silence. Like they'd all taken a vote. I sat there, staring at the screen, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just what had happened that night, it was how fast they had buried it. How naturally they chose to protect the lie instead of the person. Amanda's last message in the group was days old: "I'm sorry if I scared anyone. I'm trying to move on." No one replied. I wanted to believe there was more. That maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. That maybe I was twisting it into something worse. But that was just fear trying to protect me. I needed facts. I called the hotel. Told them I had questions about a medical incident involving my fiancé from the weekend before. The woman at the front desk was polite but couldn't help. I asked for a manager. A man named Daniel called me back an hour later. His voice was low, careful. I gave him Amanda's name, the dates, the room number. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I can confirm we had to escort a guest to emergency services that night. The medical records line up. Your fiancé was staying in room 909. Room 927 was booked by a different party." I asked if that room was part of a bachelor group. Another pause. "Yes," he said. "Multiple men. Same floor." I asked if they'd given her access to that room. He said, "Sir, I've reviewed the footage myself. She entered 927 without resistance. I can't give you names without a subpoena." I asked him one last thing. "Did she seem afraid? Leaving the room?" He didn't answer directly. Just said, "The video speaks for itself." I thanked him and hung up, my hand shaking against the side of my face. The hotel had nothing to hide. They weren't trying to cover anything up. Amanda wasn't drugged. She wasn't dragged. There were no signs of force. She walked into that room on her own. But that didn't make it any easier to swallow. What tore me open wasn't just the footage, it was the aftermath. The refusal to acknowledge it. The group effort to erase a day from existence. And Amanda letting them. She hadn't just betrayed me that night. She'd stood by while the people closest to her built a wall of silence, brick by brick, hoping I'd never look over it. She had let me plan the rest of our lives while pretending that nothing had happened. And when I'd asked, directly, if there was something I should know, she looked me in the eyes and told me no. That was the real betrayal. Not the night. Not the room. The choice to pretend I didn't deserve the truth. The apartment was quiet in the mornings, filled with the kind of stillness that presses against your ears. Amanda would usually be asleep during those hours, face buried in her pillow, hair spilling across the sheets. I watched her once, for a full minute, just breathing, unaware of the storm I was walking through right in front of her. 9 days. That's how close we were to the wedding. Less than 2 weeks from vows and rings and dancing in front of friends and family. I had the suit fitted. She had the dress hanging in a garment bag in the back of our shared closet. There were menus printed, songs chosen, final counts confirmed. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But I couldn't pretend anymore. The decision came quietly, not in a burst of anger, not even in the form of heartbreak. It arrived like a calm knowing, a full-body understanding that something had snapped and could never be repaired. I knew if I asked her again, she'd lie again. I knew she'd look at me with that same soft face and use words like overwhelmed or confused or not herself. And I realized I couldn't sit across from her at that altar knowing I'd swallowed the truth to protect her story. So I made a different choice. I told Amanda I needed to drive up to Bellingham to pick up some heirlooms from my grandmother, old silver, photo albums, things my parents wanted at the wedding. She barely looked up from her laptop when I said it. Just smiled faintly and told me to drive safe. I packed slowly, carefully. A few clothes, my laptop, the USB drive, the screenshots, the printed texts, every single piece of evidence I had quietly gathered over the last week. I also took my passport, the title to my truck, the small box where I kept old documents, birth certificate, insurance, backup keys. I didn't take much. Just what I knew I'd need to disappear. I moved my half of the savings out of our joint account. I'd done the math the night before. It wasn't revenge. It was fair. It was mine. Then I drove straight to my parents' house and told them everything. We sat in their living room, blinds drawn, the TV off, coffee going cold in our hands as I walked them through every detail, the hospital, the footage, the silence. My mom cried quietly, her fingers pressed to her mouth. My dad sat stiffly, jaw tight, nodding only once at the end. They didn't ask me to reconsider. They didn't ask me to forgive. They just asked if I was sure. I was. I spent 2 more days tying up what I could. I called the venue and canceled in secret, told them not to contact Amanda until the date had passed. I shut down my social media, backed up my files, deleted the rest. Then, the night before the wedding, I wrote the letter. It took hours. I didn't try to be poetic. I didn't rage. I laid it all out, clearly, quietly. I told her I knew about that night. I described the footage, what I saw, how I felt, what she looked like on that hallway floor. I told her I had read the texts, that I saw the pact of silence between her and her friends, the way they circled the wagons and pushed the truth into a corner. I told her I had no interest in revenge or public fallout. I just wanted my own life back. One with honesty, one with air in it. I included everything, copies of the footage, the screenshots of messages, a copy of the note that came with the USB drive. I sealed it all in a folder and handed it to a courier with instructions to deliver it by hand to Amanda at our apartment, no earlier than 6 p.m. the night before the wedding. I didn't want her to have time to find me. I didn't want a phone call. I didn't want an explanation. I wanted out. I turned off my phone in the courier's parking lot, removed the SIM card, dropped it into a storm drain, and walked away. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was jagged, uneven, like relearning how to breathe after being underwater too long. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove east, letting the city fall behind me mile by mile. By the time Amanda opened that envelope, her hands probably shaking, her breath catching in her throat, I was already halfway through Montana. I didn't leave a return address. No final words. Just the truth laid bare, one final act of honesty in a relationship that hadn't deserved it. The day we were supposed to be married, I sat alone in a quiet diner off a 2-lane road in northern Colorado, drinking coffee that had gone cold without me noticing. The sun poured through the windows like nothing had happened, like it was just another Saturday. But somewhere, hundreds of miles away, guests were showing up to an empty venue. Flowers wilting in the August heat. Waitstaff standing beside untouched tables. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. I could imagine every reaction in perfect detail. The silence would only last so long. When the first messages finally reached me, through email, through numbers I hadn't blocked yet, the fallout came fast and loud. Amanda sent a message first. Long, erratic. She accused me of believing lies, of destroying something beautiful based on edited footage and manipulated context. She claimed she was drunk, confused, didn't know what she was doing. Then she flipped, writing that if I'd really loved her, I would have spoken to her first instead of humiliating her. Her mother emailed next, short, legalistic, threatening to sue for stolen funds, for emotional distress, for slander. I didn't reply. Courtney sent a voice memo. Just one. Her tone was sharp, almost venomous. She called me cruel, said I'd orchestrated a hit job against Amanda, that I was vindictive and small. I listened to it once and deleted it. But then came Rachel. Her message was quiet, hesitant. She said she didn't know if I'd even see it, but she wanted me to know she'd tried. She told me she had begged Amanda to tell me the truth, had pushed for some kind of reckoning when they got back from Vegas. She said she'd felt sick for months watching the group lie, watching Amanda spiral and bury it all like it was a bad dream instead of something real. I'm sorry, she wrote, for all of it.